Happy Tuesday. This audio file is to help you go through the questions for catching cold. Yesterday, you should have either read the story independently on your own and watched the YouTube video about illusion, or you could have watched the YouTube video about illusion and then gone through the audio and video files posted for you with me reading the story to you. But either way, you should have read the story before you are viewing this. Now, in Google Classroom, you will find that there is a file called Examining the Race Strategy Catching Cold. It is not bonus work. It's not extra work. It actually is here designed to show you how to answer the questions that are on pages 14 and 15 of your packet. So you'll notice on the right side of your screen right now, this is the questions that are on pages 14 and 15. And then on the left side is actually that race strategy sheet that I'm referring to. So with this in split screen, it'll kind of help us talk through how you should go about answering the questions. So our first question is something that's referenced right here. And it says, what causes Tyler to conclude that the creamy cold truck is not a real ice cream truck? Use specific evidence from the text to support your answer. So your first sentence is all about rewording the question. So you've got to use the key words in the question. So your key words here are the words Tyler, creamy cold truck, not real. Okay? So you've got to come up with a sentence that turns that idea around, stating that Tyler does not believe the creamy cold truck is real. Okay? For our R step, that's what would go in that space that says R, reword the question. And then the little think underneath just reminds you, did you use keywords from the question in order to build your opening sentence? So if your opening sentence uses the words Tyler, creamy cold truck, and not real, you've done the job. The answer statement for this is where you're going to give your answer for the question. So what do you think is making Tyler believe that that truck is not real? So you could answer any number of ways based on the story, but you really do have to zero in on that conversation that Marty and Tyler were having while they were playing video games. So that's really the section you want to zero in on to call as your main evidence. So you would give your answer here. You're not quoting yet. You're just kind of generally summarizing what Tyler thought and believed about the truck and why. And then your C step would be that proof, that evidence that you're pulling directly from the text. Now, the C step reminds you that you have to put quotation marks and you have to include the page number. So if you're wherever you're quoting from, I should be able to find it because it should be super easy. You should put quotes before it and you should put the page number after it. As far as the quoting is concerned, we don't just throw quotes in there. You've got to put a little bit of a sentence stem before it, like in the text it says, or in the text it states, or in the story Tyler says. You know, whatever you're going to use as your quote, introduce it a little bit with the beginning of the sentence so that way it flows really nicely. And then our E is the explanation. Did you fully explain why Tyler believed the truck wasn't real? And so if you do this correctly, and you can use this race strategy sheet that's in Google Classroom to do it, then you should be able to take those 4 answer sections and just write them over on this section. So, Tyler concludes, and then you can continue from there, right? So if done correctly, a race strategy has at least 4 sentences. Can it have more? Sure, it can have more. Does it need to have more? That's up to you to decide. You're the author. But you've got to make sure you've answered the question, you've explained yourself fully, and you have cited evidence. That's going to be key. Okay? Question number 2 says, what purpose does the author serve in telling the story? Use specific evidence from the text to support your answer. So, when we talk about author's purpose, what we're really talking about is why. And that's kind of tough because it's an inference situation. You've got to try to figure out why an author might want to share a story with you. So sometimes an author might decide, if you're reading something like Achieve 3000, to share a story with you to give you new information, right? That's one of the basics. So oftentimes we will read for new information. Sometimes an author will try to get you to change your mind about something by giving their opinion in what they've written, right? So that's persuasion. They're trying to persuade you to think their way. Sometimes we read and an author writes to explain stuff to us. If you're, doing any kind of new activity this week, whether it's, setting up a new, gaming system, or it's cooking something with your parents, a cookbook explains how to do stuff step by step. If you're building something, it's explained step by step. So that's another purpose that an author might have. And then lastly, an author might want to just entertain you. And so the acronym that I always try to remember when I'm thinking about this is that author's purpose is as easy as pie. Persuade, inform, explain, or entertain. So those are your options. And when I put it that way, I'm sure this question gets a lot easier to answer, because you know that Neal Shusterman isn't giving you a ton of factual information. He has some allusions in there that are fact-based, but other than that, he's not really working with us to inform, right? Is he trying to change your mind about something? Not really. I mean, ice cream is good. We can all agree to that, and I don't think anybody's trying to argue that point. So that would do away with that, okay? Again, since we don't have any step-by-step instructions, we can get rid of that, which means we're left with this answer being to entertain. Now, you do have to use the race strategy. You can't just write, he wrote it to entertain, and walk away. That's not how this works, right? So with that in mind, you have to reword the question using the key words. So purpose, author, story. You need those words in turning your question around, right? So the author serves a purpose in telling the story. Now in the A, that's where you're going to share that this author is looking to entertain. And then for your evidence, you can choose any place where you found Neal Shusterman's story to be entertaining. You might decide that the most entertaining part was when he actually catches the ice cream man. You might decide the most entertaining part is when he decides that he's awesome because now he's fast. The C in this has to be quoted and it has to have page numbers, but you can pick a lot of different evidence without really doing this wrong. There's a million ways to do this one right. And then, of course, the E step in race reminds you that you have to explain. So why does that particular part of the story prove that the author is trying to entertain you? Our last question that you'll be working on for Catching Cold is question number 3. And that asks about illusions. And that's part of the reason why we worked so hard talking about the illusions in the recording, or if you watch the YouTube video, which you should have. Illusions were a big deal in this, right? So the question asks, an illusion is defined as a passing or casual reference to something from history, literature, culture, either directly or by implication. Pick one illusion from the story. Why do you think the author uses it? So now in turning the question around this time, it's kind of hard to do because our question is kind of fat, isn't it? But the keywords are still pretty easy to pick out. Illusion, it is, why do you think the author uses it? Okay, that's really the core of things. So you're going to pick any illusion you want and talk about why the author uses it. So to turn that question around, you're going to have to tell me that there are many illusions used in the story. And I think if you go back and count, it's going to be pretty obvious how many were used, right? You can decide to talk about the fact that some of them are fictional, some of them are non-fictional. That's up to you. But the core of the question really just wants you to pick one and explain why the author used it, right? Now, I know it says, why do you think? But remember, no I. We are not, absolutely not, playing with the letter I. No way, no day. The only I's I want are the ones in your head. So with that in mind, when you get to that part where you're explaining, don't get lazy and rely on the I think, I feel, I believe, I know this because those weaken your writing. You are an authority. Speak like an authority. Do not weaken your opinion by saying, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. No, you have a right to state what you believe. And I know it's what you think because you're the one writing it, right? So with that in mind, this sheet I am not grading. This examining the race strategy, it's not there for a grade. It's there to help you build your answers for questions on pages 14 and 15. So much so that at the bottom you can see underlined. Now copy these responses over to pages 14 and 15 of your packet. So really, this is just here to help you. If the writing it over here and then copying it into the packet is going to make you nuts, don't do it. Then just do it in the packet from the beginning, but use the sheet as a guide, because the guide is there to remind you of what you need to do to earn the most points. And that's why the sheet starts with the scoring rubric. The sheet starts by showing you what your answer is required to have in order to earn full credit. As with everything else, if you have any questions about these questions, you are absolutely free to email me, and I will get back to you just as soon as I can. If you email me Monday through Friday between 8 and 5, you'll get an answer right away. If it's after that or before that, you're going to have to wait for me to be on my computer, okay? And then please also don't forget, you don't have an Achieve article this week, but we do have a nonfiction article, which is attached to Catching Cold. It is only 4 multiple choice questions, so it's super duper easy. I do want you to spend the majority of your focus this week trying to get the race strategy perfected on those Catching Cold questions, all right? Have a terrific day, guys.